Hello, stream. Hey, what's up, Lauren? Do you remember 20th of September? Lunch was amazing and wonderful, and then the phone call that I had after lunch was fucking incredible. Just quick aside and story on that. The email service provider that I use is ActiveCampaign. They are very, very good. They don't start off free, so a lot of people will start off with MailChimp for free at first, which is what I used for years. MailChimp is totally fine. ActiveCampaign is just like that next level up. And the person that I spoke to gave me many cool tips and tricks and everything like that. But the main thing that she introduced me to today is a relatively new product of theirs that basically automatically sorts your list in terms of who's active, who's inactive, who's engaged, who's not engaged, and cleans your list all automatically in a very efficient way that really lets you control your list in just these ways that it's hard to like get into all of it. But our list management with what she taught me how to do is going to be, it's going to be real good. Like really, really good. So it was a good call. It's very good. But now we're reading chapter 19. The meeting was arranged for the next day at midday, the time when their enemies would have the most trouble pursuing Lauren through crowded streets if it should come to a fight. This time Lauren's whole party came, and once again Carrie guided them. She was curiously quiet as she took them through the streets, following the directions Yushan had relayed to her. At last she glanced over at Lauren. "Do you think this will work?" she said, too quietly for the others to hear. Lauren looked at her in surprise. "You were not there when we made our plans. How do you know what we mean to do?" "Prince Enlin told me," said Carrie. "He trusts me, and he confides in me when he has some doubt about his father's course of action." "And does he doubt this one?" Carrie shrugged. "He is not sure, but I did not ask about the prince. I asked about you." Lauren replied with a shrug of her own. "I do not know if it will work, but it is what we must try." That only deepened Carrie's frown. She glanced all about as though she expected to find Wojin's agents lurking nearby. "I am less optimistic. In all the time I have spent in Jun's household, I have learned one thing about senators. They all seek to increase their own power, no matter how much they have already. It is that exact attitude that led Wojin to rebel against his rightful king. I am leery of those who offer help for no reason." "Yet Durrus may have a very good reason," said Anna suddenly. Carrie and Lauren both jumped and turned to the girl. Anna arched an eyebrow. "Yes, I heard you. By all accounts, and according to everything I have learned growing up, King Jun's rule was excellent for Dorsey's economy. Nowhere was that more true than in the kingdom's southeastern reaches, which have often borne the brunt of Jun's wars, but also benefited the most from his pillaging. With uncertainty in Danfon, and indeed across all of Dorsey's northern reaches, the south is now exposed, and it faces the wrath of neighbors who have no love for the kingdom. Furthermore, those kingdoms will now have the High King's blessing to pursue war since Dorsey has joined the rebellion. Wojin would care little for any of this. He only wishes to strengthen his grip on the throne. Durrus's homeland is threatened. Jun offers an end to that threat." Carrie looked at Anna, studying her for a long moment as though appraising her. "That is a somewhat cynical way of looking at things." Anna shrugged. "Yet it is how our enemies view the situation," she said. "We cannot ignore that fact and expect to win in this little game." Lauren frowned. "How close are we, Carrie?" "Not far now," said Carrie. Indeed, they came to the warehouse soon after. The street was deserted, just as Yushan had thought it would be. Together the group filed around to the back of the building. There was a large iron lock in the door, but it broke after a few sharp blows from the butt of Uzo's spear. Lauren went inside and inspected the place. It was nearly empty, with only a few crates scattered around. She returned to the others. "It will do nicely," she said. "Carrie, go and fetch our friend." Carrie nodded and left. Annis went with Jem to hide in a nearby alley, while Shion and Uzo took up position near the warehouse, where they would watch from hiding places. Chet entered the warehouse with Lauren. While they waited, Lauren found a small box and sat upon it, resting her back against a much larger crate. She indicated the other half of the box and raised an eyebrow at Chet. "You might as well sit," she said. "I think we have a little while to wait." "I would rather stand," he said quietly. He began to pace back and forth, his steps quick. "I feel restless." Lauren eyed him carefully. "No one could blame you. Our situation is hardly free from peril." He paused and smiled at her. "Yet you seem to be facing it easily enough." Lauren waved a hand expansively. "Long exposure has let me grow used to it." "You said much the same thing before Yawamba." Chet's voice had grown quiet, and he stared at his boots. "I was terrified then, too, but it is different now. I am not just afraid, I am weary, and it is a weariness that does not leave me, no matter how long I sleep." "By all accounts, and according to everything I have learned growing up, King Jun's rule has caused much coin to flow into the purses of his senators." His words struck Lauren's heart. She had noticed it, of course, the long hours he spent in bed, the ever-growing bags beneath his eyes. She could see it in the slow way he blinked, the way he jumped at sudden sounds, the way he recoiled from her touch. "Chet," he said softly, "we have all seen much darkness, you more than most. I do not know how to make it any easier, but I do know that you need not feel guilty about it." He looked up at her, his eyes glistening, but he smiled through it and shook his head with a sudden sniff. "Thank you, but even though you say that, I cannot rid myself of such a feeling." She opened her mouth to answer, but a sudden knock came at the warehouse's back door. Lauren shot to her feet and glanced at Chet. "You should hide yourself." "No," he shook his head. "Let us get it over with. If they mean us harm, it will do me no good to hide in the shadows. They will find me regardless." Lauren nodded. Then she turned to the back door. "Come." The door opened, and Lauren's dream sight struck her like a hammer blow. Through the door stepped a woman she had seen before, features sharp and severe, thin eyebrows and regal lips. Lauren had seen her in the sewers below Danfon, and she had been a prisoner of Damaris and Gregor. Damaris had cut her throat. But Lauren had seen something like that before. Damaris had cut Chet's throat, too, in her dreams. Was this woman? She must be Doris. Was she a weremage, as Auntie had been? No, as Naya had been. It was Naya all along, not Auntie. No, Naya had been Auntie. Was Damaris a weremage as well? Who had cut Doris's throat, if not she? "Lauren!" She was on her knees, her shoulders heaved, and her breath came in ragged gasps. At the door of the warehouse, Doris stood in shock, looking down at Lauren. Carrie dashed forwards from beside the noble woman. She knelt at Lauren's side and took her shoulder, putting a hand to her forehead. "What is it?" she said. "Tell me what is happening." Lauren glanced up. Chet stood 2 paces away, hands raised as if he wished to go to her, but he held back, his fear keeping him from touching her. "I," said Lauren. The words ended in a gasp, but then she forced her breathing to calm, and she got to her feet with Carrie's help. "I am fine. A spell, nothing more." "A spell of what?" said Carrie. Her voice was uncharacteristically sharp, and her eyes were hard as steel. I cannot help you if you do not tell me what is wrong." "I said I am fine," said Lauren. She pushed Carrie away, but gently. Then she turned to Doris and forced a smile. "My apologies, Lady Faye. The road here has been long, and the city has not lacked in excitement since my arrival." Doris studied her for a moment, one eyebrow raised. "Yes," she said slowly, "I have heard of your performance in the city square. I cannot say that was a wise course of action, but it certainly has had some effect on the people." Lauren was still lightheaded, and her hands felt clammy, but she forced her smile to widen as she bowed. "I have never had much trouble attracting attention. Indeed, sometimes I attract more than I would wish." Doris sighed. "I find that easy to believe." She stepped into the warehouse and closed the door softly behind her. As she came forward, she glanced around. "Are there any guards nearby I should be worried about?" "Why should you worry about them?" said Lauren. "I thought you were here to offer your aid to King Jun." "I am," said Doris, "and my aid will be hard to lend if someone shoots me with an arrow because I make some sudden movement towards you." Lauren cocked her head. "Then mayhap you should not make any sudden movements." Doris gave an exasperated sigh. I am loyal to King Jun, but I am not one for intrigue." "I beg you not to bandy words, but to speak plainly. Is my aid welcome or not? I am nervous enough just being here." That took Lauren aback. She spread her hands disarmingly. "Let us speak plainly, then. I have guards nearby, yes, but you will not see them. They will not act to harm you unless they have a very good reason. They can tell when I am in danger, and they know that you are no great danger to me on your own." But she remembered the words that Doris had spoken in her dream. Never again will June sit the Dorshan throne. A long breath came rushing from Doris's mouth. "Very well. I am relieved to hear it, and I suggest we do our business quickly so that I may leave. You are, I presume, the Nightblade of the High King?" "I am." Doris took an eager step forwards. "And you swear your words are true? You have seen June? He is alive?" "He is," said Lauren, "and he is eager to learn how you may be of service." Doris sagged. It looked as though relief had made her limbs suddenly weak. Thank the sky. I understand, of course, that you cannot tell me where he is. I am no friend of Wojan's, but you have no way of knowing that. He must remain secret to remain safe. As you say, said Lauren, but as you and I have both said by now, let us get to the point. Why did you ask for this meeting, Lady Faye? Before she could answer, there came a knock at the warehouse door. Doris jumped and turned in a panic, but Lauren held up a hand to calm her. Do not worry, that will be one of my agents. Carrie? Carrie hastened to the door and opened it. Jem poked his head inside and caught Lauren's eye. He nodded. Excellent, said Lauren. Show her in. Jem opened the door wider and Annis stepped inside. Doris gave a start at that. Annis ignored her, striding across the warehouse to stand beside Lauren. Jem followed close on her heels. Doris stared at the lot of them, her head tilted in confusion. Who is this? Annis bowed low. I am Annis of the family Yerrin, she said. My mother is Damaris. You may know her as the merchant who has taken residence in the palace and pledged her service to Wojan. Doris's skin very nearly went as pale as Lauren's. But you... I swear that Lauren raised a hand to silence her. Be calm. She does not serve her mother. I am an agent of the High King, remember? Annis is the same. We came to this city to capture her mother, not to help her. But Doris hardly seemed reassured. She put a hand to her forehead and stumbled. Lauren leaped forwards to take her arm and helped her to a sitting position. A sitting position on the same box where she herself had rested a moment before. Doris fanned herself with a hand. I apologize, she said. The shock. I fear I am ill-suited for this sort of thing. And Damaris is... She trailed off, looking uncertainly up at Lauren. Annis took a step forwards. Damaris is what? Said Annis. She has her claws in Wojan, said Doris. He rules in name only. I and the other few senators here in the capital can see it, but we can do nothing. She disregards us entirely. I had hoped that Wojan might have some respect for the Senate. He was one of us not long ago. But he ignores us at Damaris's urging, and she is ever wary of betrayal. She does not like being double-crossed, said Annis, raising her brow. I can tell you that much. Doris studied her. I believe it. If she were to learn that I am here... She covered her eyes with a hand. Forgive me. As I said, I think I am ill-suited to this sort of thing. I was about to say the same thing, said Jem brightly. What on earth prompted you to pursue this meeting anyway, if you are so afraid of her? Jem. Lauren shot him a look, and the boy subsided, but his words made Doris look up at them, and a fire burned in her gaze. She is a foreigner, said Doris, all weakness gone from her voice. Dorsey is a proud kingdom. We do not serve at the will of outsiders. Lauren crouched before Doris, resting her arms across her knees. Her new clothes accommodated the motion easily. She hated to admit it, but she was growing quite fond of how smooth they felt on her skin. We've had enough shock and excitement for one day, or for many days, I think. Let us get on with this quickly, Lady Faye. What do you have to offer? Doris swallowed hard. Well, I and many of the other senators... Well, I and many of the other senators like me, that is, we wish to help June retake his throne. His Grace hoped that might be the case, said Lauren, yet he was also somewhat reserved in his excitement. By his account, the two of you have never been especially close. In fact, you are just as closely related to Wojan. Doris's breathing had returned to normal. Now she gave Lauren a careful look. From what I have heard about your speech in the square, you are a woman of Selvin. Is that right? Lauren nodded slowly. It is. Why? You know, then, how the other kingdoms perceive Dorsey. Many of them see us as warmongers, and they are not wrong. June enjoys battle, and many of the Senate are of the same mind, yet that is primarily because of Wojan himself. That gave them pause. Lauren looked at Annis in surprise, but the girl only shrugged. I had heard nothing of that. Doris waved a hand. Oh, June would be reluctant to admit it. Every king wishes to be seen as a strong leader, one who chooses their own path, and particularly here in Dorsey, our king wishes to be seen as the ultimate authority when it comes to war. Yet Wojan is far more warlike than June has ever been, and he coaxes the other senators to put pressure on June. When June commanded us to war, us in the southern states, I mean, he would never overextend his own forces, and he would never force the issue beyond wisdom, lest other kingdoms strike back. Even so, his wars cost many lives. That is why I came here in the first place, to urge him to pursue peace after the war on Dull Moon. It is as I suspected, said Annis. Now that Wojan is on the throne, you fear that things will be worse, not better. Doris nodded. It is not only a fear, I am certain of it. Wojan is concerned with northern politics now, of course, but after he has gathered his power, he will order the south to war again, but not just border skirmishes, a true war, a war of conquest against the other kingdoms. It is a war we have no hope of winning. Lauren wondered if that was true. Damaris served the necromancer, and Dorsey now did the same. That dark wizard had clearly been plotting this rebellion for a long time, and their shades were part of it. She doubted they would have started the war with no hope of victory. Now Lauren wondered what other schemes were in place, what next would befall the 9 kingdoms. But she could say nothing of this to Doris, of course. She needed to secure the woman's support, not make her think that Wojan would soon have even more allies on his side. King June thought much the same thing, she said, but that leaves us with the same question which you have not answered with any great exactitude. What exactly do you propose to do to help your rightful king? We have very little in the way of exact plans yet, said Doris. Indeed, until the day before yesterday, we did not know that June was still alive. But I, and those other nobles who feel the same as I do, what we do know is that our plans must begin with the army. Wojin controls the capital's forces, but only a small portion of the soldiers are truly loyal to him. Another small portion will be loyal to June once he reveals himself. They must hide their hearts now, but they wait for the right moment to reveal themselves. My daughter is one such. Lauren drew back, surprised. Your daughter? Doris lifted her chin, fierce pride shining in her eyes. Yes, she is Marana of the family Fae. She is a captain within the palace. Right now she serves Wojin, for she believes that is her duty. But if it was confirmed that Wojin is a liar and a murderer and that King June is alive... But Annis frowned. I am sure she is an honorable woman, she said carefully, yet I think June and Wojin must command an equal number of soldiers who are loyal to them. If anything, Wojin likely has the advantage, for his warriors must have killed many of June's when he took the throne. Yes, said Doris, but both of their factions together are only a small part of the army. The rest of the soldiers serve the same master they have always served, the same master most soldiers serve. Simple coin. Even if June were to reveal himself now, most of the army will be confused at best. They may even be swayed to Wojin's side in the end, since he is in command of the treasury. Then we seem to face an obstacle, said Lauren. What plans have you devised to overcome it? Doris shook her head. None. But if you can solve the problem of Wojin's coin, I will continue to raise support among the other senators. They will be ready to act in June's favor when he reveals himself, and together we can cast Wojin from the throne. Lauren glanced at Annis, and the girl nodded. Very well, said Lauren. I will return to his grace with this news. Doris stood. Thank you, Nightblade. Forgive me for my moment of fright. I am glad to have met you, and I wish us both well. As do I, said Lauren. She made no mention of her own moment of weakness. Hopefully Doris would forget all about it. She extended a hand, and Doris clasped her wrist. Then the noblewoman let herself out through the warehouse's rear door. Lauren turned to the rest of them. Annis gave a little smile and shrugged. An army to persuade and a treasury to pilfer. What could be simpler? A great many things, I think, said Jem. But who wants simple deeds? That is not what builds a legend like that is that of the Nightblade. Oh, be silent, Jem, said Lauren as she led them all from the warehouse. Hey, Erica! How's sunny Southern California? Chapter 19 done. Not so sunny? Yeah. They returned, chapter 20, they returned to June and made their report. The king seemed heartened by the news, and he nodded thoughtfully when he heard what Doris had proposed. But Lauren could not help a strong feeling of doubt. She could not fully rid herself of the memory of her dream, nor what Doris had said in it. Never again will June sit the Dortian throne. I need to get some water because my throat is... I'm going to get a glass and be right back. Chapter 20. They returned to June and made their report. The king seemed hardened by the news. Did Duras mean to betray them? Was she serving Damaris in truth? But no, in her dream, Damaris had killed the senator. Yet those who died in Lauren's dream did not always do so in life. June seemed to sense her mood. You seem troubled, he said. More troubled than I would expect, for I think this meeting went very well indeed. What is it? Lauren considered her words carefully. What could she tell him in truth? I am not entirely certain we can trust her. June glanced between Joe and Senlin, but they only looked bemused. I do not understand, said June. It seems suspect, said Lauren. Mayhap her offer is too good to be true. Call it a hunch if you like, but something feels wrong. June's frown deepened. Did she do something suspicious? Could you hear some hidden meaning in her words? Lauren flushed. From the corner of her eye, she could see Annis looking at her strangely. It is nothing so precise, Your Grace, but I have a sense for people. I only ask that we proceed with caution. We will do that, of course, said June, but for now, this is the only path that we have. We must take it or waste away here with inaction. Lauren bowed her head. Of course, Your Grace. How could she explain herself more clearly? There was no way to do so without telling June of her dreams, and she knew that would be a mistake. She realized suddenly that she had not told Annis, Jem, or Chet of the most recent vision. That would have to be remedied as quickly as possible. Mayhap Annis could... help her devise a way to convince June of the need for caution. Hey, what's up, Clooney man? It seems that our next task is clear then, said Weil from his armchair in the corner. We need to empty your treasury, Your Grace. We'd already thought that might be necessary, said Senlin. My father knows as well as anyone that many of his soldiers serve him for pay. Jem piped up, but how to do it? I've stolen coins before, but I do not think all the kingdom's wealth is contained in a single purse. The boy had seated himself upon the floor about a pace away from Prince Senlin's chair. Lauren had noted it with some surprise. Joe and the other guards made no mention of it, though they were hesitant to let Lauren get near the king and prince. Indeed not, said Senlin. Our treasury is sizable, a building near as large as a warehouse, and filled with many treasures besides mere coin. Even if we could somehow remove all the coins, which would be a considerable enough feat, Wojan would yet possess a great deal of wealth. Many of the treasures are bulky, all are difficult to remove, and they could easily be sold in order to continue paying the army. June said nothing, but sat pensively in his chair with his chin in one hand. Senlin watched him for a moment, seeming to expect him to speak, but the king said nothing. It seems that our problems are access and time, said Lauren slowly. Might I ask, Your Grace, do you have any alchemists who are loyal to you? June frowned at the question. One served me, but he perished during Wojan's attack. Lauren looked to Jem. Fetch Shion. We may have to reach out to the mystics here and see if they have an alchemist to help us. The boy leaped up at once to obey, but Joe stopped him with a raised hand and leaned forwards. I do not understand. Why do you want an alchemist? If you are thinking of storming the palace, you would do better to have a fire mage or mind mage at your side. But I doubt even a wizard could help us here unless they were uncommonly powerful. Lauren could not help a little smile. My strength is not as a warrior, but as a thief, she said. An alchemist might help us where a fire mage cannot. If Weil could lead us to the sewers beneath the treasury, an alchemist could tunnel up through the stone into the treasury itself. From there, with enough help, we could remove the treasure without anyone being the wiser. It would still take time, of course. That would not work, said Senlin flatly. Forgive me, Nightblade, but you are hardly the first to think of such a scheme. The walls, ceiling, and floor of the treasury are all enchanted against such magic. Indeed, we even have guards posted in the sewers below the treasury to ensure no one can even make an attempt, and Wojan will have maintained those guards. Blood flooded Lauren's cheeks, and she ducked her head. My pardon, I am less educated in ways of magic than I should be, it seems. She motioned Jem to sit again, and he sank to the floor with a dejected sigh. There are two things you can do to remove a man's wealth, said Weil suddenly. His voice was filled with sudden eagerness, and Lauren glanced at him. He leaned forwards in his chair now, hands on its arms, no longer slouching. Did that man Zane ever tell you how we met, Nightblade? Lauren arched an eyebrow. He did not, though you hinted at it before. I gathered you did not part as friends. Weil snorted. That we did not. I hired him and a riverboat captain to assist me with... He paused, suddenly eyeing King June. Well, with a certain business transaction. Yet when Zane discovered my aim, he misunderstood entirely, and he and the captain destroyed the goods I had intended to sell. Annis's eyes flashed. Lauren raised an eyebrow at her, but the girl held her peace for the moment. I do not entirely understand, said Lauren. What are you saying? If we cannot steal Wojan's gold, or more properly King June's gold, of course, we can destroy it. That gave everyone in the room pause. Prince Senlin frowned in thought. I do not see exactly how, he said slowly. Even if we were to melt it somehow, Wojin could simply remelt it and cast it into new coins. Jem spoke quickly in Senlin's support, and I do not see that it removes our earlier problem, namely that there is a great deal of treasure. How could we hope to melt it all without alerting the guards? We could burn it, said Annis. We could burn it with magestones. At the word magestones, the king and prince gasped. Weil very suddenly looked as though he would rather be somewhere else. Do you mean to say that you are carrying those cursed stones? Growled Joe. His hand fell to the hilt of the blade at his hip. Of course not, said Annis smoothly, yet my mother may have some on hand. June's eyes narrowed. There have long been rumors that the family Yerrin traffics in magestones, but they have always denied them. Do you mean to say that it has been true all along? I would never suggest such a thing, said Annis. What wise family would condone it? Yet we all know that my mother has been sundered from the family, and I from her. Did you not know that was the reason? That gave them pause. A different reason was given, said Senlin. It was said that she aided the Shades in their assault on the seat. Sometimes the High King cannot be entirely plain in her proclamations, said Annis. Sometimes she must give a reason for her actions. That is, not a falsehood, of course, but not the entire truth. Lauren's heart thundered in her breast. Annis walked on the edge of a knife. Revealing Damaris's involvement with magestones brought a dangerous amount of attention to all of them. If June learned that they had trafficked in the stones, or worse, learned that they still bore some, all their lives would be forfeit. Yet Annis seemed utterly calm. The coin was cast. If they were to remain safe and avoid suspicion, Lauren had to help. She nodded slowly as though she had been considering Annis's words and had now come to a conclusion. I think this is the... Spam bot! Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I think this is the best course, Your Grace. If we can steal Damaris's magestones and use them to destroy the treasury, we will accomplish two ends. We will remove Wojin's ability to pay your soldiers, and we will remove a great store of dangerous and illegal goods forbidden by the king's law. The room went silent. Jo studied Lauren and her friends with a stony expression. While Senlin looked to his father, gauging his reaction. But King June looked straight at Lauren. She felt as if he was trying to read the truth in her face, and she was grateful that her upbringing had taught her to lie so well. Even Damaris had praised Lauren's skill at telling falsehoods. At last June nodded. If you believe she has a store of those accursed stones, then I think there may be some merit to this plan. Jem wore a wide grin. Do I understand our plan aright? First steal magestones from Damaris, then use them to destroy the treasury? Lauren matched his smile. You must admit it is audacious. Audacious, said Jem. It is brilliant. It would not even require very many, said Annis. When magestones burn, they burn with dark fire. It will not only melt the gold, it will destroy it, and the fires will last until they have consumed everything they have touched. We will have to set the flames carefully to see that they do not spread too far, but once we start them, Wojin will have no way to put them out. But June held up a hand, his brow furrowing. Yet one detail still remains to be resolved. Namely, once I have reclaimed my throne, how can I expect to pay my soldiers any better than Wojin could? We would be in just as precarious a position as Wojin is, said Senlin. Damaris, or any other foe, could overthrow us just as easily as we now plan to overthrow him. When my friends and I enter the treasury, we shall bring packs with us, said Lauren. We will fill them with as much gold as we are able to carry. That can be your soldiers' pay, at least for a little while. Joe's mouth twisted in a grimace. You overestimate yourselves, or you underestimate the size of our army. Even if you took as much as you could carry, which would be so heavy that you could not escape afterwards, that would not last us a week. But Annis only smiled as she turned to Weil once more. You have wealthy friends within the city. I do, said Weil cautiously, many of them. Annis cut him off with a waved hand. Surely they have gold. Surely they have gold on hand, and I would wager they have a considerable amount of it. Weil's eyes grew shifty, and he did not reply. Anna sighed and adopted a more careful tone. If your friends happen to have gold on hand, and if they were to use it to supplement the king's ability to pay his soldiers for a time, I am certain his grace would extend his forgiveness to your business associates. Weil raised an eyebrow. Mayhap he would. Why do you speak to me of this when it seems only to help my friends? Anna snorted. Very well, and I am certain he would repay the gift as soon as he was able, with, mayhap, a bonus of 2% for the honest businessman who made it possible, as a reward for your exemplary assistance to the kingdom. The smuggler's eyes narrowed. 5%. You remember what happened the last time we bartered, said Annis. Do not toy with me. Weil spread his hands with an easy smile. What was it you said to me then? I accused you of haggling for scraps, and you told me you were only trying to maintain your reputation as a merchant's daughter. I am trying to maintain my standing as an honest businessman. Nicole! Hey! Nicole, I got to play some viewer games with Kerrigan the other day. It was awesome. I thought of you, but you weren't there. I was like, I wish Nicole was here to see this. You will wind up an honest corpse if you do not aid us, snarled Joe. Weil eyed him uneasily. 3%, he muttered. Done and done, said Annis. She relaxed into her chair and drummed her fingers on its arm, smiling. You seem to have bartered on my behalf without consulting me, said June, though his tone was not very severe. You speak of repayment, yet how am I to repay Weil? I will still have no coin in my treasury, and I cannot raise such a heavy tax so quickly. There is enough instability in the kingdom as it is. Sleeping like a pleb. That's all right. To Lauren's surprise, Prince Senlin leaned forward to speak. Yet you will have the throne, father. That is the only thing that truly matters. You, unlike Wojin, are loyal to the High King. Once you've reclaimed your seat and rallied Dorsey to her side, I am sure she will compensate us for our loss, especially if the Nightblade should speak on our behalf. It is a small price to pay for having the might of Dorsey on her side again. King June sat silently for a long moment. He drummed his fingers on his chin deep in thought, but he did not look at any of them. His gaze was far away, seeing something Lauren could not. Mayhap he imagined the future, thinking through the advantages and disadvantages of such an arrangement. Frankly, Lauren's head spun at even the limited discussion they had had here in this room. She did not think that hers was a mind for the politicking of the Nine Kingdoms, and once again she felt an enormous wave of gratitude for the presence of Annis by her side. Very well, said June at last. We shall follow the plan of the daughter of Yerrin. He inclined his head towards her. Thank you, your grace, said Annis, standing to bow in response. Lauren thought that was a bit of a joke. She was helping him and not the other way around. Annis should have been the one to receive gratitude. June excused himself from the room, taking Senlin with him. With a forlorn expression, Jem watched them go. Joe stood as well, but rather than leave, he fetched a map from a cabinet across the room and spread it on the floor between them. Lauren studied it for a moment, but could make little sense of it without being able to read the words. This is the place, said Joe. This building here is the treasury. He pointed to a building drawn on the palace's northern side. There is no entrance but the front door. There are windows, but they are very high. I do not know if you could sneak in that way. We will see when we get there, said Lauren. I am quite good at getting into places when people do not want me to. And how often have you had to sneak into a well-guarded palace, said Joe. Lauren fixed him with a look. I once strode into the middle of a mercenary army and stole a horse I liked, then set the rest of their mounts to stampede. This seems a false meat. A false meat. A small feat, by comparison. Yay, knitting. Joe grunted. Very well. But we have not been in the palace for some time. If the Yerrins are not keeping their supply of magestones in the treasure, we had no way of knowing where they would be. They will be close at hand, said Annis. My mother would not risk letting the stones out of her sight. Lauren thought back to Cabras. There, just before she had fled the city, she had infiltrated the apartment of Damaris kept at one of the inns. There she had found the woman's magestones, all kept together in a great wooden chest with a lock. It had been one of her first thefts, though she had not stolen the stones at all, but had destroyed most of them and scattered the rest for others to find, bringing the king's law down on Damaris's head. That move had been meant to remove Damaris's threat forever, though of course things had not worked out that way. She will have them wherever she is staying, said Lauren. I am sure of it. Her apartments will likely be here. Joe tapped the map with a thick fingertip. Those are the chambers where guests of state reside. Then that is our first objective, said Lauren. Infiltrate... Then that is where we will go first, said Lauren. Sneak into Damaris's apartment and steal as many magestones as we can, and then bring them to the treasury. It seems a bold plan indeed, said Joe. Audacious, as you said. But you have never seen us work before, said Jem, grinning. Or rather, you have never seen the Nightblade in action. Oh, leave off, Jem, said Lauren. But despite herself, she felt a growing excitement. When she had spoken against Wojin, she had seen Damaris's face. The merchant had been furious, yes, but she had also been surprised, and that surprise had been delicious to see. After weeks spent dodging Lauren... Predicting her every move, the merchant had finally been caught unawares. Lauren's plan was too unpredictable, too unbelievable for the merchant to have considered. This felt very much the same. Rather than try to draw Damaris out, Lauren meant to go in. Why should Damaris expect them to come after her magestones? She knew Lauren had no wizard by her side, and though she might know the treasury was one of their targets, she could not possibly guess that they would destroy its wealth rather than take it for themselves. For the first time in a long time, Lauren felt hope swell in her heart. This was going to work. She was even able to ignore the voice in her mind, Duris's voice. Never again will June sit the Dortian throne. Okay, I've been going for about 45 minutes, so I'm going to take a very brief break. Back in just a few. I have to leave at 4, so yeah. BRB. Hey, we're back. Okay. That GIF you shared is of a different Kristen. Oh. Chapter 21. Damaris paced her apartment. 2 pewter goblets of wine sat on a table against the wall, untouched. Gregor sat in a massive chair. It had been brought in especially for him, since all of the room's normal furnishings were far too small. The bodyguard studied his mistress with worry. Damaris's steps were calm and measured. She was not breathing heavily, and there was no flush in her cheeks, but anyone who knew her would know that she was seething, and no one knew Damaris better than Gregor did. This means nothing, he said softly. The girl's theatrics only make her an easier target. Someone must have seen where she went. My agents will find her. Will they? Snapped Damaris. You have said that for days now, yet we have discovered nothing. These things take time, said Gregor. Damaris stopped short. She sucked in a deep breath and let it out slowly, then lifted a hand to her forehead. I know they do. I know it, Gregor, yet we have no time. That was never true before. All these long years together, we've been able to take as long as we wanted, or at least I thought we could. But now with the war and with the necromancer... The candle on the table guttered. Gregor looked at the room's door. A gust of wind? Most likely, but a thin sheen of sweat beaded on his forehead. They understand, he said. They have told us they understand. After all, the brutes were no more help against Lauren than we have been. The necromancer is more tolerant than we once feared they would be. Damaris smiled at him as though she could sense his heart skip as he said the word. You have never named them before. Gregor's jaw worked. Forgive me, it is foolish superstition. You are many things, my friend, but you have never been foolish. Indeed, in fearing them, you show your wisdom. Damaris sighed and leaned on the back of the chair opposite Gregor. It will be all right. We will find Lauren and King June as well. She looked up across the room and right into Lauren's eyes. Duras will tell us everything. Lauren jerked, suddenly aware of her own presence. When had the dream taken her? She had watched the conversation without even realizing she was there. Now she whirled about, looking around the room. Where was she? She had not seen this place before. But the door was right beside her, and Damaris and Gregor were across the room. She threw the door open and ran through it, pounding down the hallway outside. Behind her, Gregor's voice rang out. You cannot run from me, girl. Dark below take you if I cannot, she thought, and kept going. A hand seized the back of her collar and hauled her around. Lauren screamed, drawing her dagger in an instant. She slashed, but the man who had grabbed her stepped back, easily dodging the blow. It was not Gregor, it was the man in black. He gave her a sardonic smile from beneath oddly glowing eyes. Sky above, girl. Control yourself. I am not here to kill you, so do not give me a reason to. Come. He took her arm and hurried her along. Now she recognized where they were, the Palace of Danfon. Lauren knew these halls well enough by now, but he did not take her where she feared to go, the hallway and the dining room and the secret passage leading back to Gregor. Instead, he led her to the broad front hall and then through the wide main doors to the courtyard outside. The sun was high in the sky, and for a moment its light blinded Lauren. When she could see again, she realized the man in black was leading her north. Soon she saw a small building ahead, and the man made right for it. The treasury, she thought. This is where the map showed it would be, but where are the guards? There were none at the front door, which opened easily under the man's hand. He led her inside. The torchlight struck her eyes, reflecting off gold, and for a moment it was as blinding as the sun had been. Senlin had not lied about the size of their hoard. Before her, Lauren saw more wealth than she had imagined could exist in all the world. It struck her dumb for a moment, and she barely noticed as the man in black headed to the back of the room. But at last she followed him there. A large tapestry hung on the wall. Lauren did not recognize the scene it depicted, but a man stood with his hands raised to the sky. Storm clouds seemed to flow from his fingers, and they rained lightning and thunder down upon the foes who stood before him. With a start, she realized that it was the same man as the statue in the square where she had spoken against Wojin before the crowd. His pose in the tapestry was almost the same as the statue's. The man in black pulled the tapestry aside. Behind it was a blank stone wall. Lauren froze. "What?" she said. The man grinned at her. "My job is to know the secret ways no one else knows about." He knelt and stuck a finger into the wall. For a moment Lauren thought he must be an alchemist, but then she saw that there was a little nook there, cleverly hidden unless one looked for it carefully. The man's fingers disappeared inside, and then he pulled something. Lauren heard a click, and 2 stones in the wall swung open. It revealed a passageway large enough to crawl through. "In, girl," said the man. "They are coming." "Who?" said Lauren, but a sound answered her. She heard the door to the treasury burst open. Turning, she saw Cal rush in, mystics at his heels. They saw her and screamed a battle cry as they charged. Lauren fell to hands and knees and crawled into the hole, but the man with the scars did not follow her. Instead, he swung the door shut behind her. Lauren crawled on, listening. She expected to hear screams as the man died, the way Naya had inside the palace. But there was nothing, only the sound of men pounding uselessly on the stone outside. The passageway went on for what seemed like forever. First it went down, and then it twisted left and right, and eventually it climbed again. Lauren felt the walls as she went, but there was no way to turn left or right, and after a time the passage ended. She felt the wall with her hands. There was no knob, no lever, no way to get out. She began to panic. Lauren did not fear tight spaces the way Annis did, but she was still trapped in the walls of the palace, and she had no idea how to get out. Slowly she drew 3 deep breaths. Then she remembered how the man had opened the passageway in the first place. Lauren fumbled, trying and failing to keep her fingers steady. At the top right corner of the wall before her, she found a chink in the stone. Her fingers sank inside, and she felt a lever. She pulled. The wall swung open. Lauren crawled through, and she was back in the palace again. Quickly she rose to her feet and ran on. A moment before she had known the layout of the palace, but now she was lost again, as though she had never been there before. So she kept running, guessing which way to turn every time she came to an intersection. Lauren had grown up running through the forest, and her endurance had not lessened during all the long leagues she had traveled across Underrealm. But even still, eventually her legs and lungs began to burn. She was trapped here. She would never leave the palace. Lauren turned the corner and found herself before the dining hall. There it was, empty and clear. Beside her was the small iron door that led to the secret passageway. "You know where you have to go, girl." The voice made her spin. There was the man in black again. He leaned on the wall, his arms folded, his lips twisted in a smirk. But there, too, was Naya. She stood with hands at her sides, and her eyes were sad as they beheld Lauren. "It is the only way," said Naya, her voice soft. "Darkness take you both," said Lauren. "I am here for Damaris. Gregor is nothing, and he can stay in that room and rot for all I care." Lauren leaped into the dining hall. Naya cried out and reached for her. Even the man in black tried to seize her, but she slapped their hands away and ran. No one else moved to stop her. She reached the other end and flew through the open door. There, just a span away, was the open gate that led into the city. She was almost there. She was almost free. An arrow pierced her chest. Lauren stumbled and fell. Her mind whirled back to Yawamba. She had been shot there, too. She remembered the shaft protruding from her chest, the fletching soft under her fingers. No, not the fletching. Now the arrowhead was in front. It had slid straight through her ribs. A drop of her blood fell from its tip as she watched. She had been shot from behind. Lauren managed to roll on her back as she sank to the ground. She looked up. There was the balcony, the one where Gregor always waited. In his hands was a massive longbow of yew, at least as long as Lauren was tall. He wore an evil smile as he looked down at her. All ways lead to Gregor. She understood now. She understood. She could not escape Gregor, no matter what she did. The dream released her. Lauren woke in the night, shivering and shaking. The terror of her dreams had begun to lessen, but this was different. This time the dream had not ended with Gregor moving towards her, looming in the darkness. This time he had killed her. She thought she had been clever to avoid him, but it all ended the same. She could not escape her fate, except that it was only a dream. Annis lay peacefully on the other side of the bed. Lauren shook her, and the girl's eyes snapped open. She sat up at once, drawing up the blanket. It was unnecessary. She and Lauren both slept mostly clothed, for the girl was terribly modest. "Lauren," she whispered, "what is it?" "I've had a dream," she said. "Two, in fact, and I forgot to tell you of the other one. Let us fetch the others." They went to the room that Chet and Jem shared. Uzo was on watch when they emerged, but if he thought it strange to see them awake, he made no remark. He only nodded as they passed, and then leaned back in his chair by the door of the common room. Together, Annis and Lauren woke Chet and Jem, and they gave the boys a moment to collect themselves. Then the girl sat at the foot of the bed while the boys sat up against the headboard, and Lauren told them all that she had seen. When they had finished, Jem sat frowning. I do not understand," he said lamely. "Nor do I," said Lauren. "It seems my visions are not meant to be understood." "Except when they are," said Chet quietly. "Why, then, do we bother ourselves with them?" Lauren looked at him sharply. "Would you rather I did not tell you? If I had warned you of the dreams I had in Ammon, we might not have gone to Uwamba." Chet shook his head. "I would rather we ignored them entirely, and that means you as well. You cannot still think there is nothing odd about this, Lauren. Whatever brought these visions on, whether it is the elves as we first guessed or something else entirely, it is using you, not helping you. For weeks you saw nothing, and now you have had 3 visions in only a few days." "Even if I am a tool in the hand of some greater power, I am being used to achieve the ends I wish to accomplish," said Lauren. "Whatever brought the dreams is helping me, whether or not that is the intention." "Oh," said Chet, "what exactly has it helped you accomplish?" Lauren spread her hands. "We seek Damaris. The dreams have helped us find her." "You seek to capture Damaris, not pursue her, and the dreams only show you just enough to keep you always nipping at her heels. That is better than losing her entirely. You can say that now because you do not know the end of this road. Nor do you," said Lauren, "nor does anyone. It is just as likely as anything else that the dreams are leading us to the end we seek." Chet dropped his gaze. "I think you are being drawn along on that hope, for our road has led us to several ends already, and we sought none of them." Lauren fell silent, for of course she had no answer to that. Jem and Annis looked uncomfortably at each other. Yet it almost means something," said Lauren. "To ignore the dreams would be to give up. There must be a meaning within them, or why would I continue to see the same thing over and over again?" "Mayhap the answer is not in what is the same, but what is different," said Jem slowly. "Things change from dream to dream. Might we look for clues there?" "That still seems too plain," said Annis. "Never since we came to Danfon has Lauren seen the mountains as she did in Sidwan, yet the mountains are not a very good clue." "And I see Naya almost every time, no matter what I do," said Lauren. "Yet she is dead, or rather Auntie is." Chet's expression... Chet's expression grew dark, and he turned away. "One thing might be helpful, at least," said Annis. "We saw a secret entrance to the treasury. If it is there, that would help our plans immeasurably." "If it is," said Lauren, "but if it is not, we might be trapped, thinking there is a means of escape when none exists." Annis sighed. "I suppose you are right. We cannot know what will help us until we are there, and then it may already be too late." "I fear Duris will betray us," said Chet quietly. "What if she does? What if Damaris learns, or has already learned, about her meeting with us? What if Damaris knows about our way into and out of the city, as your dream suggests?" "Then all our plans are for nothing," said Lauren. She tugged at her hair. "But if that is the case, we should leave Danfon at once and never return. Our cause is hopeless." Chet looked up eagerly, his eyes shining in the light of the room's lamp. "Would you do that?" he said. Lauren wondered the same thing. She had pledged herself to the High King, she had sworn to fulfill the duty assigned to her, and she had vowed to capture Damaris. Yet if their plans were doomed, if she was doomed, could she knowingly walk into death? She could not help the High King as a corpse. Mayhap it was wiser to retreat now, to return to Cal with her tail between her legs and seek his instruction. Her grip tightened on her dagger. If she did that, Cal might punish her. But then he would use her again, just as he had aimed to from the beginning. He would devise a plan, and he would issue orders. What would Lauren do, then, if her dreams showed her that those orders would lead to her death as well? Would she run from them? Was that to be the rest of her life, fleeing one dark premonition after another? Before she could give voice to the thought, Jem spoke up. I would not leave," he said. "Not if it were my choice. I will follow you to whatever end, Lauren, but I do not want to live the rest of my life in fear. We know your dreams have shown you lies. I think we should use your dreams when we can, but I think we must ignore them when they tell us to do the wrong thing. And fleeing this city, leaving Damaris to work her evil in Dorsey, I think that would be the wrong thing. Lauren nodded slowly. "I think you are right. I do not know why these visions have come to me, and I do not even understand them more than half the time. But I will not let them turn my life to one of fear. I am a servant of the High King. I am not one of her soldiers, but I am like one. I follow her orders and carry out her will. Every soldier marches to battle knowing that they may die. We could die now, tonight, betrayed by one of Yushan's servants. That is not enough to make me flee from Danfon. Neither are my visions. I will stay. And I, said Jem. And I, said Annis. I will stay with you then, said Chet softly. She met his gaze. Until he said the words, she had not realized how much she feared it, that this would be the moment, this would be when he chose to leave her. And in fact, she could see the sadness in his eyes, see his own fear. He had been hopeful for a moment. He had let himself believe that Lauren might actually abandon her duty, might leave Dorsey to its fate. She could see it in him now. He was disappointed, even crestfallen. Yet he would stay. Her dreams were no visions of the future. She did not know what they were, but they were not that. Very well, whispered Lauren. Thank you. And now we must all go back to sleep, for tomorrow we rob a king. Done chapter. Yum. Chapter 22. They rose early the next morning, and they left Yushan's manor before the sun had come up. Lauren brought all her party along, save for Annis. Carrie came with them as before, a guide through the streets. Lauren had come to feel grateful for the girl's presence. Danfon was still a strange city to her, and it felt reassuring to have someone along to whom the place was so familiar. And though the words they had had together were relatively few, Lauren had come to greatly value Carrie's counsel. She almost wished the girl were coming with them into the palace, but that was far beyond her area of expertise. Soon the walls loomed above them. 6 paces in height bordered the outer courtyards. It was a magnificent structure and could likely hold well against even a determined attack by enemy forces. But the wall was built of rough white stone, and Lauren knew she and her friends could scale it easily. The problem was that the streets around them were too crowded. No guards were on patrol, but 5 warriors scaling the palace wall would surely draw attention from passers-by. Lauren already felt a bit conspicuous out in public. She wore her black cloak to hide her new, distinctive clothing, but the cloak itself was beautifully made, and she thought she caught 1 or 2 sidelong glances from people walking past. Once they had walked the perimeter, they ducked into a nearby alley. We should wait a bit, said Carrie. Soon most people will have arrived at their destinations, the marketplaces and other shops. There will be fewer curious eyes around then, and we should be able to find a moment when no one is around to see us. I agree, said Lauren. Chet, would you fetch us some water and bread? We may be waiting here a while. Chet took some silver pennies and headed for the nearest inn. The rest of them settled down to wait. Jem sat on the ground against the wall, silent with his own thoughts. Shun and Uzo took up position at either end of the alley, watching for any signs of danger. 2 barrels sat side by side. Lauren hopped up on one, and Carrie took the other. For a moment, Carrie looked down the alley in the direction Chet had gone. I've been meaning to ask, where did you all come from? Lauren blinked at her. I am from Selvin, she said. Most of us are. Annis is... Well, I suppose that she is from the High King's seat, though her family's home is in Feldamar. Carrie shook her head at once. No, I mean, how did you meet is closer to the question. I know little enough about you all, but you are a forester, and Annis is a merchant child. Chet is... Did I hear he was a hunter? And I do not know what to make of Jem. How did such a varied party come to join you? Lauren chuckled. That is a tale indeed. More than one, actually, and we do not have the time to tell them all now. Chet and I have known each other all our lives. I met Annis shortly after I left the woods where I was raised, and I met Jem a little while after that in the city of Cabris. Why did you and Chet leave the forest? Lauren smiled and shook her head. He did not leave with me. I left, and he left some months later. He went looking for me, in fact, and happened upon me in the city of Northwood. Her expression fell as she remembered it, and she went silent. Tales reached us of what happened at Northwood, said Carrie softly, but I had not heard you played any part in that. Only by accident, said Lauren. The Shades, the ones who destroyed it, they were looking for me, and I lingered there too long, for I had lost someone, and I had also learned something unpleasant. I spent too many days wandering the birchwood, with Chet trying to lure me out of my sadness. You say he went there looking for you, said Carrie. Why? A small smile dusted Lauren's lips. Because he loved me. In truth, he had loved me for a long while before that, and after I left the forest, he was drawn out to find me again. Carrie's eyes widened. I am sorry. I did not realize. Lauren's smile vanished. He would have had little reason to. Things have not been well between us since before we came to Dorsey. Many things have happened to us in our travels together, and some were worse than others. To Lauren's surprise, Carrie looked down at her hands in a quiet fury. That seems to be a common thread that wends its way through all of Underrealm in these days. It is why I grow frustrated that I cannot help. Lauren put a hand on her shoulder. Yet you yourself said that we must accept the things we cannot change, the things we are blameless for. We can vow to ourselves that we will do better in the future, but that does not mean we must stew in the darkness now. How do you do that? Said Carrie. How do you keep the sorrow away? Lauren paused to think. She had wondered much the same thing back in Northwood. She had sought comfort in Chet's company, but that had been little help. Only leaving the town had begun to lift her mood, even though that had been a dark enough day on its own. It seemed to her that taking action had been the best thing she could have done. That and... Look at him, said Lauren. She pointed at Jem. The boy was fiddling with a small knife from his boot. He flipped it back and forth across his fingers. It might have looked impressive that he did so without cutting himself, but Lauren happened to know the blade was incredibly dull. Jem and Annis have been my solace through many dark times. Jem is always cheerfully arrogant, excessively so, and Annis always seeks to throw herself into whatever bit of work is before her, not to mention the fact that she has a brilliant mind. And when I am unsure of what to do or when I feel a dark mood coming over me, I only have to be around them and they bring me out of it. And when they are frightened in turn or mournful, I do my best to return the favor. Sometimes they want reassurance of safety or some plan of action. But most of the time it is enough simply to be with them, to tell a story and share a laugh. Alone any one of us would likely have fallen into sorrow, but we all look after each other. Friends, said Carrie. I had few enough of those even before the city was in turmoil. Lauren smiled at her. Well, you have some now. Carrie returned her smile, and Lauren had to look away to keep herself from blushing. Chet soon returned, and they ate the bread and drank the water. Then they waited, huddled in their cloaks against the cold, while the street beyond their alley gradually cleared. Before the sun had long cleared the tops of the mountains, Lauren poked her head out. There was hardly anyone about, and the few stragglers would soon be out of sight. She looked up at the wall. There were no guards patrolling, but only some standing guard in the towers. If they climbed the wall right beside a tower, they should be able to avoid detection. She turned to the party. It is time. Ready yourselves. Oh. Brain not want work. They stood, shaking off the snow that had dusted them while they sat. Once the street was clear, Lauren led them across it. She climbed first. The wall was as easy to scale as she had thought it would be, and soon she scrabbled over the top. She fell to her knees on the other side of the ramparts. The courtyard beyond was empty. She could hear the soldiers above her moving about the tower, but their gazes were turned up and outward. Lauren did not doubt that the army was on alert since her appearance a few days ago, but clearly no one expected her to infiltrate the palace directly, for the guards seemed to be lax. Lauren leaned back over the ramparts and motioned to the others. One by one they came up after her, all but Carrie. She would remain behind, for she would be of little help once they were in the palace. Using Joe's map, they had very carefully chosen the place to climb up. Here a smaller wall joined the palace to the main outer wall, forming a barrier between the front and back halves of the courtyard. This little blockade was less than a pace wide and not designed to be walked on, but if they were careful they could use it to reach the palace itself. Lauren glanced up one last time to ensure the guards were looking outwards, not towards the palace, and then she led her party across it. She had to control her speed. It would not do to slip on the snow and fall into the courtyard, but they reached the palace without incident. Just above them was a balcony. Lauren leaped up and seized the handrail, pulling herself atop it before helping the others make the climb. Once they were all up, Lauren tried the door. It was unlocked. Wojin is arrogant, said Shion, once they had slipped inside. This was almost easy. It is to be expected, said Lauren. He only lets his most trusted guards watch the palace, and those are very few. They could at least check the lock, said Uzo. What if it is a trap, said Chet. What if Damaris guessed this is our aim? That gave Lauren pause. It seemed unlikely that Damaris could anticipate such a plan as quickly as they had come up with it, yet their entry did seem almost too easy. She shook herself. She shook herself. We will be cautious, she said. If we see the jaws of a trap closing around us, we run. But we will carry out our mission. Let us go. They had entered the palace very close to the apartments where they guessed Damaris would be. The hallway outside their room was empty, and Lauren turned right, creeping down it. She feared that at any moment she might recognize the location from her dreams. That could be disastrous if the dream site struck her as it had when she met Doris. But nothing happened, and soon they had reached the last corner. Starting to lose it a little bit. This is definitely the last chapter. Before the apartments, Lauren peeked around it. There were two guards there, dark of skin and wearing green clothing, Yerrins. Lauren ducked back out of sight. We have the right place, she murmured. I see two guards. Easy enough, said Shion. Jem, go back to the last turn in the hall and keep watch. I do not think we can take them silently. If more soldiers come, we will need your warning. Jem looked up in shock. He had already begun to draw his sword. I thought I was supposed to fight, he whispered. Jem gave him a hard look. He gave an exasperated sigh. Very well. Quickly he ran back the way they had come. At Lauren's signal, they charged around the corner. She, Uzo, and Chet ran wide, hugging the left wall to give Shiyun a clear shot. Her arrow sank into the thigh of one guard, who grunted as she went down. Before the nearer guard could draw his sword, Uzo was there. The butt of his spear cracked the man in his forehead. Finally, Chet pounced on the second guard. He struck her senseless with his staff, but not before a defiant yell burst from her lips. "Well, someone will have heard that," said Uzo evenly. "Then let us be quick," said Shiyun, running up behind them. Oh my god, that would be the most amazing audiobook. All right, well, I can simulate it for the rest of this chapter, which I'm sure will thrill Kristen no end. Lauren opened the door and leaped inside, one of her knives held before her. For a heart-stopping moment, she feared to find herself in the same room from her dreams, but it was not the same room, and Gregor was nowhere to be seen. For just a moment, relief washed through her. This is good. Then she saw the figure in the chair. It faced the window, and the sunlight cast it in silhouette, but Lauren could see that its hands were bound behind the chair. It did not move. Lauren straightened, her throat going dry. I can't. It's better than Elmo. Oh, good idea, Kristen. Thank you very much. Behind her, Chet and the Mystics hesitated. She knew what she would find when she turned the chair around. She had seen it in her dreams already. Uzo and Shiyun searched for a chest, a lockbox. Search the cupboard if you must. Find the maidstones. They went to do as she had bid. Slowly, Lauren approached the chair. Chet went with her, but remained a half step behind. I got one more. One more, and then I'm done. Lauren? She waved him off. Step by step, she came around the chair, finding exactly what she knew she would. It was Doris. She had been tortured to death. In the end, her throat had been cut, just as Lauren had seen in her dream. All right, we're done. But it was obvious that she had been dying for a long, long time before that. Bruises covered her face, and one of her severe-looking eyes was almost swollen shut. There were other wounds that looked far more painful, cuts all over her body that left blood running down her dress to soak into the carpet. Lauren shuddered as she realized it must have been done overnight. They had met with the senator only yesterday. Nightblade, said Shiyun. She had approached while Lauren was distracted. The room is empty. There are no maidstones here. Nothing but the corpse, thought Lauren. Duris dead, just as I saw in my dream. What else among my visions is fated to pass? Lauren, said Chet. Damaris outwitted us, said Lauren. She learned somehow that Duris had met with us, and she plied her for information. That means, she looked up, working it out. That means she could have traced us back to our hiding place. Somehow. Uzo's eyes widened. This was not a trap for us. The guard here is light because the soldiers are out scouring the city to find us, or they have found the others already, said Shiyun. Lauren met Chet's gaze and saw the same fright in his eyes that must be in her own. She could not have learned about us from Duris about Yushan's manor, he said. Duris did not know. We took precautions. She knew about Duris before our meeting, and she followed us back from there, said Lauren. It is the only possibly explanation. It is the only reason Damaris and Gregor would not be here. We need to leave now. Footsteps pounded in the hallway outside. Uzo turned, hefting his spear, and Shiyun drew an arrow, but they put up their weapons as Jem appeared in the doorway. Guards are coming, he said breathlessly. Time to go, said Lauren. Out of the palace and then back to Yushan's home. We have to save the king. They ran down the hall, back the way they had come. Lauren heard the cries and bootsteps of soldiers in all directions. Just before they reached the room by which they had entered, they came upon 4 palace guards. Lauren's party launched themselves into the fray. She herself downed one guard with a punishing blow from the hilt of her dagger. The rest fell before they could recover from their surprise. Jem got his chance to fight, fending one off with desperate swings until Uzo could pierce the man with his spear. Lauren winced as she saw the spearhead sink into the man's chest. The hallway was clear again, and their door was only a few paces away. Quickly, said Lauren. They leaped from the balcony to the barricade and ran along it. Guards in the tower were looking inward now, but there were only 2. Shiyun paused, shooting one in the throat. His companion fell to the ground, taking cover. That gave them the time they needed to reach the wall, and they heaved themselves over it. As soon as they reached the ground, Carrie waved them over to the alleyway. On her face was a look of stark terror. I heard the alarm and feared the worst, she said. Were you successful? No, said Lauren tersely, and King Jun is in danger. Take us back to Yushan's manor, and do not stop for anything. Oh, long chapter. Why is this next chapter so long? My God. My God. Okie dokes. I have got to go. I'm going to be picking up my kids decently soon. I am going to try and get back to this tonight and finish it tonight. We'll see if that happens. We know how evening streams go. But whether I see you tonight or tomorrow in the morning, I only have until about 1 tomorrow. But that should be enough time to finish it. But anyway, whenever it happens, I'll be back for the next stream whenever it is. Thanks so much for watching, y'all. Thanks for hanging out as we do these last few streams of Yerrin. Catch you next time. Bye!